Reaching the conclusion that you have to go no contact with someone that you once cared about is difficult. No contact is a last resort that sadly is often necessary in abusive relationships because it helps to prevent reoccurring abuse. But just because it's necessary does not mean that it's easy. It's normal to want to have an adult conversation over a matter, even if that conversation involves ending a relationship. It's normal to want to share your perspective, to validate the other person's perspective. Even if you don't agree with the other person's viewpoint, you can still validate their perspective, and it's normal to want and need to have your perspective validated. When we have those kinds of conversations that are difficult but necessary at the end of a relationship, that's when we get closure. But if you're watching my channel, you know that getting closure from individuals that may be high up on the scale of narcissism, getting closure from them is impossible. Yes, if the person that you're ending the relationship with, whether it's a toxic friendship, a family member, a parent, sibling, or an intimate significant other, if that person is emotionally abusive and refuses to respect your boundaries, then in order to hold on to your sanity, you have to let go of hoping that you can get closure by them. You have to let go of hoping that they will validate your perspective or even the truth of what really happened in the relationship. Sometimes it can feel like no contact prevents you from getting closure. Maybe you see the other person has moved on as if you never existed. Maybe they've implied that it was your fault that the relationship ended, and by refusing to validate your perspective, you're left with it ending with that lie hanging in the air. Trying to get closure by yourself is going against how we normally operate. We normally get closure together with the other person. And so when you've had to go no contact and you don't get the closure the way we're accustomed to getting closure, the temptation to break no contact can feel like it occupies your thoughts 24/7. What some people do is they'll use their sheer willpower to stifle that desire to contact the other person. And that's commendable because they're doing whatever they need to do in order to keep themselves emotionally safe. However, something I often say to my face-to-face clients is, what we resist persists. So in other words, what we stifle will continue to demand our attention. When we stifle our feelings, it causes us to ruminate. It prevents us from focusing on our life in the present. It causes anxiety, stress, and worry. And it's all of those intense emotions that start coming up that make us think that we need to contact this other person so that we can feel better, so that we can get that closure. But as you know, there are some people that by contacting them, it only causes more emotional anguish. So if you're battling no contact and you're trying really hard to not break no contact and you're struggling, here are some tips that are helpful. In my face-to-face coaching, I tell my clients that their feelings deserve to be heard, they deserve to be validated, but I also help them to see that they can do that for themselves. A powerful way to validate feelings that you have for someone that you went no contact with is to write a letter. This allows you to bring up your feelings. It allows you to say what you deeply need to say. It allows you to process and release the feelings that come up. The next thing that I tell my face-to-face clients is, after they have their letter, imagine that the person that they're in the relationship with is sitting in an empty chair in front of them. And they're going to imagine the person sitting there and then they read the letter as if that person was listening. Whatever feelings come up, validate them. Tell yourself what you wish the other person said to you. For example, something that you might long to hear is that it's not your fault. Things happen, people are different, people separate, but you are still a good person. Well, we all know that no toxic person, no one high on the scale of narcissism is going to say that. But if you need to hear that, you can say that to yourself. After you bring up those feelings, that's what you want to say to yourself. Whatever you wish that person said to you. The next step is to not send the letter. Make sure you do not send it. You can burn it. You can rip it to shreds. Our mind often sees in pictures, and so our mind understands pictures and illustrations, so it will relate to the burning of that letter being that it is final. The event, the circumstance has ended. There's a finality to having something burned and no longer existing. And then you simply repeat those steps until you're bored, until your mind says, I don't want to do this anymore. When you get to that point, then that's when you can see that it has been resolved. There's no more stifling. The emotions have been resolved. When you do these steps, you are giving yourself the closure that you crave. We tend to think that the other person has to be the one to give that to us, but that's not true. You can give yourself this closure, and then you can close the door to that toxic relationship, and you can move forward and towards healthy relationships.